In the 1950s and 60s, psychiatry took an unexpected detour into the psychedelic realm. Psychiatrists like Humphrey Osmond, the man who actually coined the term psychedelic, began experimenting with LSD-assisted psychotherapy. The early reports were astonishing. People with severe alcoholism and trauma showed emotional breakthroughs that talk therapy alone hadn't reached. Osmond believed LSD could temporarily dissolve the ego, allowing patients to confront repressed pain without defenses in the way. Across the ocean, Stanislav Grof, a young Czech psychiatrist, was exploring LSD as what he called a microscope for the mind. He described patients reliving birth experiences, processing trauma, and reaching deep spiritual insights. And this was long before the word integration became a therapy buzzword. LSD was first synthesized in 1938 by Dr. Albert Hofmann, who was a Swiss chemist working for Sandoz Laboratories. He was trying to create a new medication from fungus, which is the same fungus that grows on rye and can cause hallucinations. His goal was to develop a stimulant for circulation and breathing. He wasn't necessarily trying to establish a mind-altering substance. So it sat on a shelf for years until 1943 when Hofmann decided to revisit the compound again. During the process, he accidentally absorbed a trace amount through his fingertips. And then he began to experience intense visual distortions and euphoria. 3 days later, he intentionally ingested 250 micrograms to study it further, famously riding his bicycle home through a kaleidoscopic trip. That day, on April 19, 1943, became known as Bicycle Day, which is the world's first intentional acid trip. After Hofmann's discovery, Sandoz Laboratories realized LSD had powerful psychological effects and sent free samples to psychiatrists and researchers around the world under the brand name Delicid. The label literally suggested it could be used for two purposes. One, to induce temporary psychosis in healthy subjects, so psychiatrists could understand what their patients experienced. And two, as an adjunct to psychotherapy, helping patients uncover repressed emotions or memories. At the time, psychiatry was still dominated by psychoanalysis and insulin coma therapy. So the idea of a drug that could expand consciousness and deepen self-understanding was revolutionary. Early psychiatrists believed LSD could mimic schizophrenia, allowing doctors to experience madness safely in a controlled way. They thought this would increase empathy and help in studying psychotic states. And then there was also the ego dissolution theory, because others like Humphrey Osmond and Stanislav Grof saw something different. They noticed patients sometimes emerged from LSD sessions with reduced anxiety, profound insight, and emotional release. There was also the ego dissolution theory, because others like Humphrey Osmond and Stanislav Grof saw something different. They noticed patients sometimes emerged from LSD sessions with reduced anxiety, profound insight, and emotional release. Osmond described it as temporarily loosening the ego, allowing patients to face trauma without being overwhelmed by shame or fear, similar to what modern trauma therapies try to achieve. LSD arrived during a cultural shift. The 1950s to 60s human potential movement, when psychiatry began exploring consciousness, spirituality, and personal growth. Writers like Aldous Huxley, who wrote The Doors of Perception after taking LSD with Osmond, fueled public fascination, portraying psychedelics as gateways to understanding the mind and the divine. Many psychiatrists saw this as an opportunity to blend science, spirituality, and healing, an idea that was radical at the time. And at the same time, intelligence agencies like the CIA became obsessed with LSD for very different reasons. They believed if the drug could break down the ego, it might be used for interrogation or mind control. This led to Project MKUltra, where LSD was administered without consent to soldiers, prisoners, and civilians, often causing long-term psychological harm on these individuals. So while some doctors used LSD to heal, others were weaponizing it. By the late 1960s, public panic about acid culture and uncontrolled use outside clinics led to LSD's criminalization in 1970. Research halted, and psychiatry shifted toward antipsychotics and antidepressants instead of psychedelics because they were safer, more marketable, and easier to regulate. Today, modern researchers, especially at Johns Hopkins, Imperial College London, and MAPS, have picked up where Groff and Osmond left off. They're finding that LSD, psilocybin, and MDMA can reduce activity in the brain's default mode network, easing rigid patterns of thought associated with depression, trauma, and even addiction. So psychiatry has come full circle. The same curiosity that started it all is now being revisited, this time with neuroscience, ethics, and caution. Now we're watching a renaissance unfold, one that's forcing psychiatry to reckon with its own past. The same substances once labeled as dangerous are now teaching us about neuroplasticity, meaning, and consciousness itself. That's all for this topic today. Thank you for being here. I'll see you next time.